Okay, Persona, a series that has a very special place in my heart. Like, Persona 5 is literally the reason why I even got into the Megami Tensei franchise. But, as we all know, not every game is made coolly. We can't give every single game a first prize. So today, I'm gonna reveal the good, the bad, and the ugly of each respective game and rank them. Disclaimer before we start, I need to explain how I'll be ranking the games. I will only be ranking the mainline games and the enhanced re-releases. So that means no Persona Q or Strikers. Also, this is just my opinion, so if you disagree with my rankings, please don't tag me. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it. It is almost cliche putting Persona 1 in the worst spot. Everybody and their mother puts this game here. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't deserve it. Like, come on. Persona 1 was the very second Persona game that I've ever played and completed. I had a lot of memorable moments playing through it, with the Harem Queen arc in particular, which I will say is just beautifully written. The combat isn't really the best thing in the world, but I mean, it wasn't that bad. But the main focus of the game, the characters are very likable, but I do wish we got to see more development through the game for some characters, like Nanjo for example, a character who in my opinion got done the dirtiest. His personality is nice and all, but he doesn't really change as a person with the events of the main story. Nanjo at the end of the game is no different from the person that he was at the start of the game. The themes and topics also play a huge part in what made this game memorable to me. The exploration of human mentality is a topic that just really sits tight with me. And the music. Man, the music. I don't care if I get hate for this, but Persona 1 music is the best in the series, especially the original PS1 version. Because of all that, coming into this ranking, I had the impression that Persona 1 was going to be a lot higher in this list. Well, it is until I actually replayed the game. And it's rough. Very, very rough. It is a slog to go through, and it's not fun, like, at all. I'm fine with random encounters if the combat is actually fun, but the balancing makes it so that you can just power through every encounter with just your basic moves, even though the enemies are a far higher level than you are. And it just makes it a chore paired with the encounter rate. The only saving grace that stopped me from tearing my head off is the battle track, which is, again, nothing short of amazing. Another thing is how you get new demons, and more specifically, the negotiation. To give you a short version, they are an RNG fest, and even though there is a mechanic with this meter that is intended to help you, the game can just say, screw you, and refuse to follow any rhyme or reason. Also, they don't have any funny option to really forgive the infuriating stuff that this game pulls. So, TLDR, an amazing album that comes with a good game with a lot of potential and good characters, but infuriating game mechanics and whack balancing. 5 out of 10. I hate this game, but I kinda don't hate it at the same time. It's weird. I mean, I can just say, Totoro's bad, and your average Persona fan would instantly understand and be satisfied with it. Like, it is that bad. I genuinely would rather go through the domain of sloth than Totoro's. But my dislike for this game isn't just limited to Totoro's either. It's also the time management mechanics and how social links work mechanically. I don't like the way that the game forces you to romance all the main female party members, nor the fact that your male party members aren't even given a social link. Another thing is the way that your time management system works, and how painful it makes the pacing of the game. Speaking of time management, the main problem that I have is the fact that you are given a lot of time with not much to do. So what I choose to do really doesn't feel that impactful, because the opportunity cost that you have given up for that day, you can just do that the next day, or even 3 or 4 days later. And the game wouldn't really punish you for that. So most of the days, all I end up doing was just hanging out with whoever I wanted to progress the social link with repeatedly until a social link event comes up. Some of you might be saying, what about the fact that you can reverse the social link if you don't spend enough time with a character? Well, to be honest, I actually like that mechanic about Persona 3, and I think it definitely should return in the future. But I would have liked it a lot more if it was stricter and they reduced the time frame that is given to you to fix your problems. But to end on a positive note, the writing is great. The story, the characters, the social links, they're all great. The theme that is going for, not really. Despite sounding great on paper, the acceptance of one mortality and how different people are affected by it in different ways if you don't know, the execution wise, it leaves a lot to be desired. And other than a few standouts, the music is mid. TLDR, great game alone for the story and characters, but it's unfortunately paired with the worst gameplay and time management mechanics in the series. 5.5 out of 10. Oh boy, where do I even begin with Persona 5? First of all, before we get into negativity, let's talk about the positives. The gameplay is the best in the series, and it really carries the game to the placement that I had put it in. And the quality is pretty consistent throughout the whole game. The dungeons are also great, or maybe I'm just happy that it's not randomly generated crap. And the first arc of the game, the Kamoshida arc, is in my opinion where the series really peaked. Really. Excellent writing with great characterization, good integration of the overall theme of the game, and the sub-issues explored with the main story and characters. All of this paired with great gameplay, which admittedly is still very easy, but let's ignore that. And the best dungeon in the game, mechanically, just gives this first arc all the praise that it deserves. Surely the rest of the game is equally as good or even better than this. Spoiler alert, it's not. Starting with the Madarame arc, the cracks in the writing starts to show, like this sequence with An.
I will put my heart and soul into creating the best nude painting ever!
What? Nude?
To think I'd be able to create a nude painting with my most ideal model.
You have just come of an arc that shows us how An was exploited sexually for the sake of her best friend and established that she is uncomfortable with anything to do with that. And just mere hours later, you pulled this? And you know what's the worst part? It was all played for a joke. Playing through this part, I was actually very uncomfortable. But despite that, the story is still good in this arc, and Yusuke is a very good character, probably even my favorite in the game, and the dungeon design is also very visually impressive, probably the most beautiful dungeon in the game, and it ends nicely. Coming into the next arc, this is where the game just takes giant nosedive in quality, with the introduction of the worst character in the game. She's not interesting as a person, nor is her character development even good, despite the fact that she gets the most attention out of all of the people in the main cast.
Also, Makoto is just Isabeau, but not as well done.
But you know what's the worst part? After this point on, the characters that I loved in the previous arc, like
Yusuke
and Ryuji, are just completely ignored and contribute nothing to the main plot. But somehow, the worst was An. She not only becomes straight up irrelevant to the story. When she does get used, it is usually for comedic relief by putting her in sexual situations. An had so much potential to be one of the greatest characters in the series. And you do this? Another negative is Futaba. And yes, I am saying that Futaba alone deserves point deductions from this game. The writing did somewhat become good again for the Okumura arc, but Haru barely gets any screen time, and you all know how the dungeon is. Also, the third semester. A lot of people liked it. I don't.
It tries to do what mainline SMT does, but it ultimately fails. Also, Kasumi/Sumire is just weird.
Maruki is the only good part about the third semester. And when people say that they love the third semester, they're just saying that they like Maruki. And yes, I will admit Maruki is a great villain. TLDR, worst game in the series story-wise, but gameplay carries it to 6 out of 10. One pattern that you will notice from my reviews of the previous games is that They excel in one aspect but is dragged down by a critical failure in another aspect. Like how Persona 3 has great story and writing, but gameplay wise it is bad, which ultimately decreases its overall experience for me. But Persona 4 is different. It doesn't really excel in any aspect, but is consistently good throughout the whole game in all aspects. The writing, characters, and story aren't as good as, say, Persona 2 or 3, but it's not as bad as 1 or 5. And likewise, the gameplay is not as good as 5, but it's not as bad as the rest of the games either. Like, there's nothing to say about this game except that it's great. Not amazing or fantastic, it's just great. But despite saying that, there is one thing that I think this game excels at, and it's the same thing that has kept me coming back to this game time and time again, which is the atmosphere, which leads to great immersion. This game really makes you feel like you're a teenager who is in a small town in the countryside of Japan. It does this so well that I'd even say that it rivals the Boku no Natsuyasumi game series in this aspect. And in this game, spending time in the countryside isn't even the main plot. No, the main plot is this murder mystery going on. This game also has the second best villain in the series.
Adachi.
TLDR, the balance between the highs and lows of Persona 3 and 5 doesn't really excel in any aspect, but still managed to be great in all of them. Overall, an amazing game. 8 out of 10. Now, that brings us to the final game. Drumroll please. The best Persona game ever made is Persona 2. I've already alluded to why this game is in this place in my section for Persona 4. But if you missed it, the reason why is because of the writing, story, and characters. They are so good that it even made up for the poorly balanced gameplay, where you could just beat the game easily with your starter Persona and just mindlessly pumping one stat. Yet it's still better than Persona 1 though, and definitely better than Persona 3. But as you know, there are two Persona 2 games, Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. And choosing the better between the two is like asking me which one of my two children I love more. But if I had to choose, I would choose the first child, also known as Innocent Sin, over Eternal Punishment. I might be in a minority for saying this, because I know a lot of people do prefer the older cast in Eternal Punishment, and the overall gameplay in Eternal Punishment, which is just more balanced. Also, the ending. Man, the ending. The ending for the duology alone is worth 10 times more than everything you have to go through in both games. But I do prefer the younger cast in Innocent Sin. I'm a young person. Due to that, I feel that I relate more to the problems of characters such as Jun, Lisa, and Ikichi than say Ulala or Baofu, even though they are amazing characters. Also, come on, you get to fight this guy. Who wouldn't want to fight this guy? Another thing is that Nanjo and Eriko return in Eternal Punishment, and this game really gives their characters the closure that they need, which feels very satisfying. And for my last comment, Nyarlathotep Taff is the best villain in the series. TLDR, two of the best written games ever made, only dragged down by poor balanced gameplay and some jank, but the writing alone makes up for it tenfold. 8.5 out of 10. Also, Kazu Tensei proofread this script for me, and he left a comment in my grade of Persona 2, which just said, based. So, take it how you will. So, yeah, that was my ranking. I know that I'm gonna anger a lot of people with some of the stuff I just said, but to hell with it. Looking forward to reading what all of you think in the comments, and I don't have an anime girl telling you to subscribe to transition to my outro like some people do, so take this, I guess.